Hello grade 12 students! I hope you are all doing fine. Welcome to the second learning episode of General Biology 2. For this discussion, we'll be talking about how can we really say that evolution is really occurring among living organisms. Yes, we'll be talking about the various evidences of evolution. Let's proceed. For this discussion, our expected learning outcomes are the following. First, you must be able to explain various evidences of evolution. And second is to infer evolutionary relationships among organisms using the evidences of evolution. So based from our previous discussion, we talked about biological evolution, and we have defined it as a genetic change in a population from one generation to another. The speed and direction of change, however, varies with different species lines and at different times. Continuous evolution over many generations can result in the development of new varieties and new species. Likewise, failure to evolve in response to the environmental changes may lead to one thing, and that would be extinction. Now, when scientists speak of evolution as a theory, they do not mean that it is a mere speculation. It is a theory in the same sense as the propositions that the Earth is round rather than flat, or that our bodies are made of atoms. Most people would consider such fundamental theories to be sufficiently tested by empirical evidence to conclude that they are indeed facts. As a result of the massive amount of evidence for biological evolution accumulated over the last 2 centuries, we can safely conclude that evolution has occurred and continues to occur. All life forms, including humans, evolved from earlier species, and all still living species of organisms continue to evolve today. Now, by this point, you must be thinking, what are those various evidences that pertains to the real occurrence of evolution among living organisms? Let's understand them one by one. The evidence for evolution has primarily come from 4 sources. First, we have the fossil record of change in earlier species. Then we also have the biochemical and anatomical similarities of related life forms. And then we also have the geographic distribution of related species. And lastly, we have the recorded genetic changes in living organisms over many generations. First, let's talk about paleontology. This is the branch of biology that deals with rocks, or specifically the fossil records found within these rocks. Remains of animals and plants found in sedimentary rock deposits give us an indisputable record of past changes through vast periods of time. This evidence attests to the fact that there has been a tremendous variety of living things. Some extinct species had traits that were transitional between major groups of organisms. Their existence confirms that species are not fixed but can evolve into other species over time. The evidence also shows that what have appeared to be gaps in the fossil record are due to incomplete data collection. The more that we learn about the evolution of specific species lines, the more that these so-called gaps or missing links in the chain of evolution are filled with transitional fossil specimens. One of the first of these gaps to be filled was between small bipedal dinosaurs and birds. Just 2 years after Darwin published his book on the origin of species, a 150 to 145 million year old fossil of Archaeopteryx was found in southern Germany. It had jaws with teeth and a long bony tail like dinosaurs, broad wings and feathers like of birds, and skeletal features of both. This discovery verified the assumption that birds had reptilian ancestors. Since the discovery of Archaeopteryx, there have been many other crucial evolutionary gaps filled in the fossil record. Perhaps the most important one, at least from our human perspective, was that between apes and our own species. Since the 1920s, there have been literally hundreds of well-dated intermediate fossils found in Africa that were transitional species leading from apes to humans over the last 6 to 7 million years. Another clue to patterns of past evolution is found in the natural geographic distribution of related species. It is clear that major isolated land areas and island groups often evolved their own distinct plant and animal communities. For instance, before humans arrived 60,000 years to 40,000 years ago, Australia had more than 100 species of kangaroos, koalas, and other marsupials, but none of the more advanced terrestrial, placental mammals such as dogs, cats, bears, horses, etc. Land mammals were entirely absent from the even more isolated islands that make up Hawaii and New Zealand. Each of these places had a great number of plant, insect, and bird species that were found nowhere else in the world. The most likely explanation for the existence of Australia's, New Zealand's, and Hawaii's mostly unique biotic environments is that the life forms in these areas have been evolving in isolation from the rest of the world for millions of years. Another branch of biology that seems to be an evidence of evolution is anatomy. Many groups of species share the same types of body structures because they inherited them from a common ancestor that had them. This is the case with the vertebrates, which are animals that have internal skeletons. The arms of humans, the forelegs of dogs and cats, the wings of birds, and the flippers of whales and seals all have the same type of bones, which are humerus, radius, and ulna, because they have retained these traits of their shared common ancient vertebrate ancestor. All of these major chemical and anatomical similarities between living things can be mostly accounted for by assuming that they either share a common ancestry or they came into existence as a result of similar natural processes. The study of one type of evidence of evolution is called embryology, which is the study of embryos. An embryo is an unborn, or at least unhatched, animal or human young in its earliest phases. Embryos of many different kinds of animals, such as mammals, birds, reptiles, and fishes, look very similar, and it is often difficult to tell them apart. Many traits of one type of animal appear in the embryo of another type of animal. For example, fish embryos and human embryos both have gill slits during its earliest developmental phase. In fish, they develop into gills, but in humans, these gills disappear before birth. This shows that the animals are similar and that they develop similarly, implying that they are somewhat related, have common ancestors, and they started out the same, gradually evolving different traits, but the basic plan for a creature's beginning remains the same. And lastly, we have biochemistry. All living things on Earth share the ability to create complex molecules out of carbon and a few other elements. All plants and animals receive their specific characteristics from their parents by inheriting particular combinations of genes. In addition to molecular similarities, most living things are alike in that they either get the energy needed for growth, repair, and reproduction directly from sunlight in a process known as photosynthesis, or they get it indirectly by consuming green plants and other organisms that eat plants. So that would be all for our second topic for General Biology 2. If you have any questions or clarifications, you can have it during our synchronous classes. I'll see you then. Thank you and God bless.